Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the channel. My name is Nick, and today, boy oh boy, do we have a special video for you guys here today. If you can't already tell from the title, this is going to be yet another tier list video. We've done a couple of these in the past on various topics, but today we have a special one here. I am celebrating my 50th video uploaded to this channel today with a tier list based on my previous videos here. I have all the previous ones here, 49 of them, as you can see on the bottom here, that I'm going to be ranking today on a massive tier list. I wanted to do something special for the 50th video, of course, because in my opinion, that is definitely a big milestone, especially for YouTube. I've been doing this pretty consistently for the past 2.5, almost 3 years now, come next April. So it'll be quite a treat when we get there for the 3-year anniversary. And in that time, I have uploaded well over, now 50 videos, which is really, really cool to see. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Could not do it without you as well. Just keeping me motivated throughout the last couple of years to put out all these great videos. And the number itself is a bit debatable because there are some videos that I have uploaded either to this channel or to some other channels that I'm not including on this tier list because of one or many other reasons, and I'll explain those more maybe sometime in the future. But if you go to my YouTube studio or any of the subscribers that I have, just go to my channel. It'll currently say 49 videos, and then when I upload this one that you're watching, that'll be officially the 50th. So that's how the math works out. But like I said, there are a few other videos here and there that I have to some other channels, like my shorts, for example. There's a handful of videos on there, but those I'm not including on this tier list, just the ones from the main channel here, ranging from the Describing 50 Bands in One Sentence that was uploaded all the way back in April of 2019, up to the most recent video as of this recording, which is my favorite songs off of every Green Day album. So that's the range that we're going to cover today. The main criteria for ranking these are going to be based on how much the video was fun to make, /edit, /produce in some way, and when I went to rewatch all of these, how well they have held up. I know some people are going to probably comment and call me out for ranking some of my videos high because it might seem kind of like egotistical in some way or arrogant to say that I have really good videos because of course I made them, but I am not going to I'm not going to hold back anything because I know some of my older videos especially are really, really bad in comparison to some that I've made more recently, and some that have just not held up well at all. So don't think that this is just going to be like just me patting myself on the back for an hour. Like, I'm going to definitely critique some of my videos. And to that point as well, some people might ask why I don't private my videos or delete anything that I don't think has held up well if I'm not as proud of it as I once was. And the main reason why I choose not to do that is because I want to always be improving on YouTube. I always want to make sure that the videos that I'm putting out more and more consistently in the future are going to take from the older ones what I didn't do as well or what I can improve on, and make them even better as we go further. And like I said, over the past 2.5 years or so, definitely from the older videos, I think I've done that pretty well, pretty consistently over time there. So I always want to have those as a reminder from, reminding me where I came from and trying to be humble with it in some way. And I know that this is like a little small thing, only a handful of people really care, but for me personally, it's just always something that I want to have that reminder of and always be humble about it. So with that in mind here, why don't we go through and talk about all my previous videos here. Please feel free to comment as well. If there's videos that you really like or dislike, feel free to let me know about it. Because like I said, I'm always trying to improve. So if there's something, that I've done in a video or a video from the past that you're not really a fan of, let me know, because I always want to know what I can improve on and what you guys want from me. So with that, why don't we jump into this with the very first video I ever uploaded. We're going to go in chronological order here, which is the describing 50 bands in one sentence, like I said. And this is the only video that I'm going to allow myself to put in the top tier here, the God tier. Sorry for those pound signs or hashtags. For some reason, it was censored, the word God, for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm going to put this one in the God tier here, solely for sentimental value here. This is definitely one of my favorites, and of course it was the first video I made, so it means a lot. This is also one of the most successful I made, the second most viewed, actually, after the classic rock band tier list, which we'll talk about in a little while here. But I love this one. This one was inspired by a video that's very similar on the same topic that was produced by Become the Night, which is a great music channel. I was always really inspired by a lot of music YouTubers that I watched from back in the day, people like Lua Lua and Intensify Charts for the compilation videos that we'll get into, and people like Become the Night or ARTV or people like that are just kind of all over with their music. They do a lot of different things, commentaries, reviews, rants, especially reaction videos, all that kind of stuff. But this was one that I was always really, really interested in trying for myself, and finally got the opportunity to do it, and that launched my YouTube career. So this will always mean a lot to me. And like I said, I don't think it's the best video in this style that I've made. I think the sitcom one I actually prefer. But just for sentimental value and just for nostalgia, I'm going to put this one in the top tier there. Moving on from that here, we have the first collab video that I did with my brother Matt, who has appeared several times on this channel since then. This is the reacting to the top 10 most underrated Beatles songs here. And for this one, when I went back and rewatched it, because it had been quite a while since I saw a lot of these older videos, I think this one's held up okay. I'm going to put this in good tier. Definitely not the strongest of our collabs. I think some of our future ideas would have been a lot more creative, would have a little more substance to them. I've never been a huge fan of watching reaction videos, but I always enjoyed kind of the idea of making them, because I think it's kind of interesting to see people's genuine thoughts on a certain topic, and when you don't go in with any predetermined notion of what that's going to be, you get to see a very, honest, genuine kind of thought process come from that, and I think that's really well reflected in this video here. But the main reason it's not any higher is just because this isn't really a style that I would want to make now. Like, this is definitely something that only could exist from the past. You know what I mean? Like, this is a style that I think everyone does at some point when they're starting out, but once they kind of grow and find their niche a little bit more specifically, the reaction style just isn't really as appealing anymore. So for me personally, I'm going to put this in the good tier. Not a bad video, but definitely something that I don't think I would make nowadays. And then moving from that here, another one with Matt here, we have the ABCs of Rock Playlist Challenge. Now, two things about this video before I talk about its quality. This was, at the time, the lowest viewed video that I had. Like, these two previously did really well. They got a couple hundred views in the first week, and I was super proud of that, especially for a channel as small as mine with barely any subscribers or anything, and I didn't really market these out or anything at the time, so it was just a very genuine kind of reaction that people had to these videos. But this one, on the other hand, completely failed in terms of the viewership and stuff, and B, I am proud of that, because in my opinion, this is by far the worst video that I've ever made on this channel. This is easily going to go in bottom of the barrel. When I rewatched this one, I was totally shocked by how, just genuinely bad it was. There's so many individual aspects about this one that could be improved just on technical, elements of the video, like the lighting, the camera work, the sound, like all those little basic things that every video creator or YouTuber should know how to do, just fundamentally speaking. And this one just completely disregarded all of those. The idea is really specific and really oddly niche too, that I think kind of didn't really attract the same audience as the previous ones. Matt and I were really like kind of closed off in this one. You can tell that this is a really early video because we're very shy in this, and we're not as outgoing, we're not as talkative in this video. So there's just a lot of really fundamental, simple elements of this one that I think just completely missed the mark here when we went to shoot this. But again, as a reflection of my older videos here, it's a good reminder to see where I came from, especially in the beginning. And this is like the prime example of one that like every YouTuber has that one video when they first start that they reflect on or they look back on way later, and they're like, they really have grown from this. And this is mine here, the ABCs of Rock playlist challenge there. Moving on from that, here we have one of the many compilation videos on my channel here. As I talked about just a minute ago, big influences for this particular style were people like Lua Lua and Intensify Charts and Lycan and all those like hip-hop YouTubers that do the compilation videos pretty much daily. If not, multiple times a day in some cases. And I always loved that style. I just liked presenting music that I enjoyed and wanted to share out with people, especially if it was kind of underrated or stuff that I just always listened to quite frequently. And for this one, it was the 100 Great Songs of the Decade. Now, this one was published right at the end of 2019. It was like December of 2019, right before Christmas, actually. And so it was a nice reflection of the 2010s, essentially. Like, all my favorite songs, or just 100 songs that I really enjoyed that were released at some time during the 2010s. It's a very simple video, but it's very effective, and it was a really well-received one when I talked to people, because it was like, oh, you brought in a lot of songs that I hadn't heard in years, and kind of, going back to the early parts of the decade with a lot of the nostalgic tracks that we would listen to way back in like middle school and stuff. So it was really cool to just like reminisce with people about that kind of stuff and see what music they liked as well during a decade that was really diverse in terms of its entertainment sector. And looking back on this one, I enjoyed this one for sure. I'm going to put this in great tier. Definitely, I think one of my stronger sort of compilation videos that I made from back in the day. The one thing about this, though, that if you watch it is pretty noticeable, is one of the songs is silent, and it's actually an Adele song that I wanted to use. To this day, I've never put another Adele song in any of my videos, because this was the first time that I experienced copyright in one of my YouTube videos, which I hadn't ever had experience with before. So that was kind of frustrating, because when I went to upload it, of course, I wanted to have all the songs in there, and naturally, one of them was blocked due to copyright. So that's why I've never used an Adele song since then. And this would definitely not be the first time or the last time by any means that I would have to deal with copyright there on my channel, which we'll go a little more in depth in throughout this video. But that was the first experience of that. So that was a good learning lesson to kind of get sort of a sense of what to do in that situation. But outside of that, I really do like this one, and I'm going to put that in great tier. Next up here, we have one of my all-time favorite videos that I made with my buddy Mike here, another collab that we did early on in the channel's existence here, the Hot Potato Challenge Rap Edition with Mike, of course. This one is definitely going to go in the A1 tier. The only thing holding it back from the God tier, I think, is the sort of lack thereof, maybe, of us being a little more outgoing, a little more charismatic in the video. Again, this was pretty early on when we were just starting out. This was within the first year or so of me making videos, and this was the first time that Mike had ever really done a video. He wouldn't start making them on his own until much later. Of course, now he has his very own channel, but at the time, this was kind of a new experience for him. So there were like little things in this video. I actually had him introduce the video, the challenge of what we were doing. So that was kind of bad on me for not being a good host to my own channel, which again is something you learn along the way there. You kind of gain experience with that as you make more and more videos. But the actual substance of this one and the actual game, I think, is really, really well. I've always wanted to do a follow up to this, maybe something with TV now, as we're both a little more experienced in that. So, Mike, if you're watching this, definitely let me know if that's something that you want to do at some point. We can link up and do another one of these for sure. But yeah, like I said, this is definitely one of my favorites. A1 tier, without a doubt. Next up here, we have another one of the compilation videos for the 2010s here, 50 more great songs of the decade. And similarly to the 2010s one that I had just before, I'm going to put this in great tier. Essentially just more of the same, right? So if you like that video, you're going to like this one. The same style, the same sort of presentation and font and everything like that went into it. It's just with different songs pretty much. So nothing more to comment on that. Two that I definitely enjoy still to this day. And then moving on from that, a different style of compilation videos. One that I always loved doing were the A to Z videos, the alphabetical ones, presenting a specific genre or specific type of music by letter. So this first one that I did was the best rappers by letter 2020 edition, the A to Z's there. And these all kind of vary depending on which bands were chosen and how much it's held up. Because for some of these, especially the rapper one in particular, I think if I were to make it nowadays, you know, a year or so, year and a half after the initial videos went up, definitely would have had different choices. So for this one in particular, I'm going to put this one in good. This is probably going to be the lowest ranked one of all of the A to Z ones, because some of the ones that I chose at the time definitely wouldn't hold up nowadays. Like for M, for example, I chose Macklemore and Megan Thee Stallion. I think Megan Thee Stallion is still good, but Macklemore, I don't know what I was thinking choosing him for that. What's another one? Like F was Fetty Wap, for example, which is kind of a weird choice. Probably would be Future now, of course. But just little things like that. So I think a decent amount still are very, very good, but some of them just haven't aged as well. So for that reason, I'm going to go good for this. And then the next one here, the classic rock bands by letter, of course. Of all the A to Z videos, this is the most viewed one. This has around like 700 views or so now, which is really cool. People love their classic rock, as I've been preaching for years. This one is another one that had some copyright issues. There's actually two in particular that don't have any sounds for them, and one of the letters is actually missing. Funny story. So when I first uploaded it, the only band that I had to mute the sound for was the Beatles, ironically. And it's weird because in the underrated Beatles songs, you can hear the songs just fine. I didn't have to worry about it. But for some reason in this one, they decided to block it. So inconsistencies is also something that you'll find pretty quickly as you start making videos more and more frequently. But that was the only one that was initially blocked, and I could do the video, so I could still have them on screen, which was fine. But fast forward about a year or so after the video had gone live, and all of a sudden, the band that was chosen for the letter Y, which was Yes, also is now blocked. So this video was blocked for like a week without me even knowing it, because it was such an old video at that point, and I didn't even like realize that, you know, people weren't watching it. And then I went back in my analytics one day and I realized it had gotten blocked all of a sudden. So I had to basically delete that portion of the video. So if you go back and watch it now, it's missing the letter Y. So it's actually kind of incomplete, which is kind of interesting to know how that works, because most of the time I won't rewatch most of my videos. Like I'll upload them and then that'll be it. You know, I'll just have my, you know, subscribers watch them, whatever, and I won't really think about it all that much unless something like that comes to my attention and I have to fix it in some way. But since it's such an old video, I've never really bothered to go back and fix it up, which is maybe not the right frame of mind to do that. What's actually weirder too is the initial push in terms of the viewership was pretty steady, but since then, when I had to take out the portion of Yes, it all of a sudden like blew up, and it got like another like 200 in the next week after that. And like I said, it's sitting at 700 now, and it's the most viewed of any of the A to Z videos. So just funny how those things work sometimes, I guess. But because of that, again, this is one that's going to have to go in the good tier. I wish I could put it higher because I do love a lot of the bands on here, and I think my picks have definitely aged better than, like I said, the rapper video. But because of those copyright issues, I don't see myself putting it any higher than the good tier there. All right, the next video here, this one is a bit debatable if it should even count for this. Technically, it is a video on my channel, so I am going to include it here. This was a Valentine's Day video I made for my girlfriend, Stephanie. Uploaded this on Valentine's Day, appropriately enough. And it's a very simple video. It's just kind of pictures of her over a song. It's very like 2007 YouTube, if you will, something that you'd see back then. I have nothing against this one. Like, it's not something that I really associate myself with, like, since I've done all the music stuff. This is just kind of like a, spur of the moment thing that I decided to upload that day. But it's not bad. I'm going to put it in good here. It's not really a video that I think most people would associate with my channel, and obviously I wouldn't expect anyone to go watch it or anything like that. But for what it's worth, like, it's not a bad video or anything. Another A to Z, we have one here. This is the pop punk and emo bands. For those who are unaware, pop punk is one of my all-time favorite music genres. Of course, Green Day is my favorite band, so naturally when I got into them years ago, ended up discovering a ton of great bands in that genre, like Blink, Sum 41, 21 Pilots, all the big pop punk bands, and of course the emo bands from the early 2000s. So this is one of my favorites in terms of ones that I got to make, because I think pop punk is as popular as it was really dominated by a few select, big names out there. Like I said, Green Day and Blink, probably the most popular in that regard. So this was cool because I got to definitely show off a lot of the smaller bands that I really like, and kind of introduce people to a lot of the underground scenes of the pop punk world, which was really cool. So for this one, I'm going to go in the great tier. Most of these compilation videos, like I said, they're all pretty much on the same. So if you like some of these, you're pretty much going to like them all. That's just kind of how it works. But this one in particular definitely means a lot to me because it's just one of my favorite genres to kind of introduce to people. And that was one of the inspirations for making it in the first place there. So definitely a thumbs up for that one, in my opinion. Following that here, the first time that we did a non-music related video on this channel, this was the first crack at a TV video. The sort of initial push for this was just because we were all interested in doing something outside of music between me, Matt, and Mike, because we had done the music related stuff on this channel before. And when we were talking to do another collab, we were like, do you want to try something else and kind of experiment a little bit? And we thought this was a really cool idea to do a TV tournament here based on the March Madness tournaments that were supposed to happen that year. We made this right before the pandemic started, so March Madness ultimately got shelved for 2020, of course. But the inspiration still behind it, we thought was really cool. And I love this one. Like, the sitcom tournament is definitely one of my top favorite TV videos that I've ever made. Just producing it, editing it was a lot of fun. Being with Matt and Mike, of course, the collaboration between us was always a blast as well. This is definitely going to go in the God tier here. This is, like I said, definitely one of my top favorite TV related videos. There are a couple more that I think are definitely in these top couple tiers, but just for the reminiscence of this video as well, rewatching it was a ton of fun. Like I said, every little aspect to this I can have some nostalgia for, or have some positive memories about making this video in some way. So definitely going to go in the top tier there. Yet another of the A to Z ones here, the metal bands this time. And not really much to comment on this one that I haven't already done for some of the other videos, so I'm going to say this is another great tier video. I think for the most part in the A to Z tiers, like I said, it really depended on what bands I picked and how much they've aged. And I think for metal, you know, most of the time, that's a genre that, similar to pop punk, is going to be dominated by a good portion of, you know, the mainstream big names when it comes to hard rock and metal, like Metallica and Slayer, and, you know, all the thrash metal, Black Sabbath, of course, when you're talking about the classic from, you know, the 70s and stuff like that. So all of those obviously are going to be, you know, timeless picks for the A to Z type videos there. And then a lot of the smaller bands as well, kind of introducing my audience to those as well was really cool. I've always considered myself, well, between me and Matt, definitely less knowledgeable about music as a whole, but for specific genres like pop punk or some of the more niche stuff like metal, I would definitely have the upper hand in that compared to Matt. So I got to pick some bands that he wasn't even aware of, which was really cool, kind of introducing him to some of those as well. So like I said, some memories in that definitely helped me put this one up in the great tier as well. But like I said, I think the picks for this one were just really consistent. All right, in the next video here, we have the musicians we lost during the 2010s here. This was another one that initially I wanted to make right when the decade ended, so around the time that I put this video out, the 100 Great Songs, because it was kind of a tribute and kind of a retrospective on the 2010s music scene, which was definitely something that I wanted to do from the start, because when I started my channel in 2019, I knew that it was going to talk about music, and music in the 2010s most specifically, because that's the decade that I grew up in, of course. So it was really there were a couple video ideas that I had that I wanted to expand on that a little bit and show the different sides to it. So talking about different songs, talking about different artists, and then unfortunately talking about people that passed away in the 2010s, which there were just far too many of course. But I wanted to do some sort of tribute video in that in some way, and definitely talk about some of my favorite artists that ultimately passed away there. And I did it in this little montage sort of way with, you know, simple titles, simple graphics, simple music, all that stuff. This is definitely not a flashy video. It's not going to be something that you're really going to, you know, have this urge to rewatch or anything. This is really something that I think you're going to watch once and you're going to enjoy it, but it's not really something you're going to come back to. So for that, I would say it's probably just in the good tier. Like, it's not, you know, the highest quality or anything. It's a very simple video. Anyone can understand it, obviously. But like I said, without the flash and everything, this just isn't something that you're going to rewatch all that much. Similar to like the Valentine's Day video I made. Like, I wouldn't expect everyone to go out and watch this one, of course. But yeah, definitely a solid one nevertheless there. We have another one of the compilation videos for the retrospective of the decade here, so this is going to go up next to these as well. Again, these are all pretty solid, great videos in my opinion. Definitely, like I said, if you watch, you know, any of these, you're going to like them all. They're just all very similar in that regard. In terms of the individual songs, because I went back and watched these, of course, for the video for the tier list, and I would say of these three, this is actually a lot of my favorite songs. In particular, the last one there, between this and the first one, I think have most of my favorites in terms of like which one I would rather just have for the songs specifically. But like I said, all of these are really great nevertheless. A video, on the other hand, that is not so great is the top 10, or excuse me, the top 20 Lil Rappers there, 2020 edition. So this video came as kind of a joke. Me, Matt, and Mike just hung out one day and we were just talking, and I mean, it's been a running joke in the hip-hop community for a long time now that all these rappers have these weird, you know, this weird trend that they all just use the word Lil in front of their name, and there's a billion of them, right? Lil Mosey, Lil Wayne, Lil Baby, Lil Durk, like there's a bunch of them. Just that's an endless list. So I thought it would be kind of funny just to make like a top 10 or a top 20 on all of these different rappers and just see how many there are and just rank them. But unfortunately for this one, there's two main issues with this video looking back on it. For one, the presentation and
the style of this one is really weird, and it's unlike a lot of my other videos, which I think hasn't really helped it in the long run, because the way that it is kind of presented and the way it like transitions and stuff, I don't really know why I chose it that way. I guess knowing that it was going to be more of just a gag video, if anything else, like most people weren't going to take it seriously, so just trying to make it as like, you know, bizarre and as kind of crazy as it can be with the transitions and everything. But on top of that, I think also the ordering in this list and how well the placement is has also really aged pretty badly here. The main issue that I personally have with it was at the time I figured it should be consistent with how I had it on my the A to Z rappers, because for that one I chose Lil Uzi Vert as the best with L, so I figured that should be number one. But a lot of people were commenting that I should have had Lil Wayne, or it should be someone with a little more history behind them, or just having more sort of legacy behind them. And I, you know, talked to a few people about the ordering and stuff like that, and they all told me Lil Wayne. And so ultimately what happens is you end up with two videos that are uploaded within a pretty short amount of time from one another, with completely inconsistent results from one another. So if you ask me, I would personally say it's either Uzi or Baby as my top now, looking back on it from over a year ago. But for, you know, my fans, if you will, everyone else told me Lil Wayne. So but ultimately, where does it land on the tier list? I'm going to say that this is a pretty bad video. Definitely not something that I would be too happy with now, especially if I produced this. I just wouldn't think it was up to standards. And looking back on it, definitely just a weird video that we can forget about here on the channel. From that, we have arguably my best video, definitely best in terms of popularity and viewership. People that even aren't close to me in real life, or aren't subscribed, or haven't been for a while, probably know me best for this one here, the Ultimate Classic Rock tier list. And this, of course, was the first tier list video, and definitely the most successful. Even though I don't think it was the best, or it hasn't aged as well as in addition to that, just for the viewership and everything that it kind of represents for my channel, of course, talking about music and talking about classic rock, of course, this is definitely one that's going to go high up on this tier list. I'm going to put it in the God tier there. Like I said, I think tier lists are something that you really have to do a lot in order to really get them down. Like, the more and more you do them, the more you talk about them, the more experience you have with them, the ultimately better and more efficient you can be at them. And I am definitely not that good at tier lists, because I've only made a very, very small handful. This is only my third on the channel. Comparable to other YouTube channels out there, or even people that I'm close with, like my buddy Mike, has a ton of tier lists on his video, and I think he's really good at them as a genre, in terms of just being able to kind of familiarize himself with the format. Classic rock tier list, that was definitely one that I had no expectations for. Like, I did not expect it to be as popular as it was, or get the viewership that it did, but somehow, some way, it ended up being my most watched video. Alright, next up here we have Rapper or Beat Volume 1 here. Now I'm going to actually grab all of these, because there's 3 of these videos in particular, and these are all going to go in the bad tier here, and I'll explain why in just a second. The main inspiration behind these were all of the other compilation videos at the time that people like Lua Lua and Lycan and all those guys were doing, that took, you know, popular hip-hop and rap songs and basically presented them to say, were they better based on the rapper or the production? Essentially, very, very simple concept there. But the way that those guys do it, with a lot more slick editing, a lot more slick presentation, was definitely a much more appealing idea to me to kind of replicate that in some way. And I am by no means that great of an editor. I would actually say that my editing is probably my weakest skill in terms of any sort of video production in terms of the skills that you need. But for this one in particular, it really, really, really just felt very lifeless. Didn't really have a lot of personality behind it. I think the majority of my compilation videos at this point going forward pretty much had that sort of issue where they just all felt kind of the same, and I did them for so long that I wanted to break away from that. So that's why I haven't really made any in quite a while. But these in particular were definitely the biggest sort of victims of that, I think. And with some more polishing, with some more kind of charisma, these could have been really, really good. But they just ultimately they just weren't up to my expectations. All right, next up here we have the last of the A to Z compilations here that I made over a year ago. And this one was on the best female singers by letter. I really like this one as well. I think that this is definitely one of the strongest ones in that regard. I think there was like one or two that I know got blocked and I had to mute. I know one of them was Aretha Franklin for sure. And other than that, though, this one was another strong one that I think really held up well. A lot of my choices I think were really solid to this day. I definitely agree with a lot of them still. I would put this in great tier. Pretty much what I said about the other ones as well in this series. Just really basing it on your picks and how much those have aged. Another one that I had, another kind of mini series that I had with the compilations for the next two videos, again inspired by the Lualuas and the other compilation videos that I saw doing stuff that was similar to this, was the best rappers by Instagram followers and then the best rock bands by Instagram followers. And I think both of these I'm going to put in the meh tier. Nothing wrong with these on the surface. Like, they're fine videos, you know, that they're presented well, and it's a very similar style to all my other compilation videos. So that's not really the issue that I have with these, but more or less the topic I think is really specific, and it's like a really niche thing that very, very few people would be interested in. I always want to make videos that invoke discussion and create sort of a discourse around whatever the topic is. And I think these two in particular were just really just not suited for that, you know, because they're not like opinion based, they're more just factual. And even more so than that, these are really outdated now because the Instagram followers of all of these musicians and rappers and everything have changed since then. So they're only really accurate for a very small amount of time. So that's my main problem with these, is just the fact that were not really suited best for what I want out of YouTube and what I made videos for in the first place, and the fact that they have just aged so poorly because a lot of the information is very outdated. So as a result of that, I'm going to put them in the meh tier. All right, going into the next one here, another set of compilations that I did for a brief time were the good rappers versus great rappers versus GOAT rappers, and I did two of these. Both of these are going to go in the great tier. I had a lot of fun rewatching these. These ones, again, presented pretty much the same way as all the other ones, so nothing different in that regard. But the main thing that I just loved about these were the just concept of them. I think were really well done. If you watch them, and you might notice this the more and more that you see it, but if you go back, all the individual kind of sets of three, when it says GOAT, good, and like good, great, and GOAT, all those rappers kind of share similar qualities to one another in some way. So they might all be from the same era. They might all have the same sort of subgenre. They might be from, you know, a specific kind of like, you know, place or something. They might all be from like the same kind of city or something like that. And kind of comparing different performers in that particular style or with those certain elements together to see who is, you know, comparable, good, GOAT, and great. And I thought that was a really cool way to do it. In addition, I think that pretty much all of my opinions on this has held up as well, because these are pretty recent. in comparison to a lot of the other compilation videos that I made. So I think my opinions have definitely stayed put on these as well. All of the GOAT rappers, I would still say, are some of my all-time favorites as well that I listen to very often. So for that all being told, I'm going to put them in the great tier. All right, next one here we have is young rappers versus old rappers. This one, is just kind of whatever. I think I'm going to put this in meh as well. Another one of those compilations that is fine, like you can watch it, it's not going to be bad necessarily, but it's just such a weird sort of comparison. Just didn't really do a lot in terms of anything to forward my channel in any way. Just kind of there, like not a bad video, but just kind of forgettable more or less. So just meh tier is fine for that. All right, next up here, another compilation we have is the rap songs that I loved on the first listen versus rap songs that grew on me. I love the concept of this one. I think the concept was great. The execution was pretty good as well here, so I'm going to put this in the great tier as well. This is one of the few that I would consider doing another, like, topic on this on, but maybe not so for rap. I would probably do it with rock songs. But the main thing that really hit this video in particular, it might not seem that way on the surface when you watch this, but for some reason the copyright on this one in particular, I remember, was just brutal, dude. It was like, because most of the time any of these compilation videos had some issues with copyright. Like that was just like a given, and that was one of the reasons why I stopped making them. Was I just got frustrated and just wanted to get away from having to go back and re-edit everything, and it was just taking up way too much time. So pretty much all the compilations had issues with copyright in some way, but for whatever reason, this one in particular got like 6 or 7 different claims on it, because most of the time it's like 1 or 2, and that's not really that big of a deal. It's annoying, but it's not that big of a deal. But for this one, it was like half the damn songs were blocked in some way, so that was really annoying. And one of the reasons why I really, really wanted to make this one as good as possible, because I wanted to just like they were all my favorite songs. Like I liked all of these, so I didn't want to obviously get rid of any of them or mute any of them. So I had to change some of the songs from my initial picks because they just weren't going to work because they'd get blocked in some way. Had to change the videos around, had to do all sorts of stuff to make it work. But ultimately it did, and I think it turned out really well. Going back and rewatching this one, this was definitely one of my favorites. So I'm going to put this in great tier. All right, the next 3 here, more compilations. Another detailed series that I had kind of planned out before I actually made them were these city comparisons. So I did 3 of these: Atlanta versus Chicago, New York versus Detroit, and then Florida, Texas, and California together. And as much as these 3 are very similar to one another, and as much as all of these are really good, I'm going to actually put these all in different tiers. The Atlanta-Chicago one, I'm going to put in A1. The New York and Detroit, I'm going to put in the good tier. And the Florida, Texas, and California, I'm going to put in the great tier here. And that might seem weird, like why am I splitting these up? Because these are all very similar. For the Atlanta-Chicago, this is one of my most viewed, so it has that, thumbs up for that, of course, which is awesome. But more importantly, like I was talking about just a minute ago, the main reason why I wanted to do YouTube in the first place was to create discussion, right? To create some sort of discourse around music and now TV as well, and just talk to my fans and see, what their insight is on all of my different videos, and see what kind of music they like and what they think is good and bad, and just have, a community surrounding that. And the Atlanta-Chicago video in particular was really good at sort of bringing a lot of new people into it and creating that discussion. There's a lot of great comments on this one. It's one of my most commented on, actually, believe it or not, in addition to having a lot of viewership, which obviously go hand in hand. But the comments on this, there's a good debate here over which city ultimately has better rappers between Atlanta and Chicago, two of the most famed hip hop cities of all time. So, really good comparison to make there. Personally, if you ask me, I'm Team Chicago, but I know a lot of people love Atlanta, and honestly, how could you not? They've just been driving force with the rap scene for years now. But that was one of the main reasons why this video in particular was so well received, I think, was just because the comparison is so, simple, but it also creates a lot of really good talking points for both. And there's a good argument to have there over which one is ultimately better. So I just love this video for just being able to bring in that sort of conversation and have some really good debates there. For the Florida, Texas, and California one, this was probably the most fun to make because I love all the rappers that I chose in this video, and there were some underground ones as well. I think these three in particular, because I didn't do specific cities, I did states for these, had a lot more varied rappers to choose from. So I got to do some of the more, mainstream ones and ones that everyone knows, and then some of the more underground ones as well, which is really cool. And like I said, I think this one overall had the best selection, so that's why it's going in great. The New York and Detroit one, I had a lot of expectations for this because I thought these two, again, two cities that have just been driving forces when it comes to hip hop for several years now. Of course, I'm from Detroit, so I like to rep our rappers as well a lot of the time. But for this one, it was just kind of more disappointing. Didn't really get that same response from people in terms of the sort of debates that you could have on this one. So a little bit disappointing in that regard. But I think also this is just kind of the most forgettable of the three. So for that reason, I'm only going to put it in the good tier. All right, next up here we have the best and worst XXL freshmen per year. Another compilation video. The XXL freshman videos that were put out year after year. I wanted to make something on these for a while, going all the way back in 2019, because I've been following XXL for many years, even before YouTube. I've been tracking them. It's probably one of my favorite just like events to happen each year is to see the list and see all the ciphers and everything. And I've been wanting to do more since I did this one for the 2020 list. I wanted to make more videos on XXL, but again, it's the copyright that really gets it here because there's so many rappers, so it's like so many different labels and stuff, and it just, the more and more different songs that you have or different artists you have represented, the more of a headache that becomes. So that's one of the main reasons why I've held off on doing them. But this one, very simple. Just looking at all the different lists. Like I said, the 2020 was the most recent at the time, and picking the best and worst rapper from each of those. I did get some controversial picks in this, which I wasn't really expecting, because I think for most XXL, there's a clear sense for each rapper per year if they're good or bad. So really, as long as you choose from the right camp, I don't think it really becomes as much of a debate. But there was definitely some controversial picks in this one that I got some comments for, which was kind of interesting. But I think overall this one's held up all right. I'm going to put this in good. I just wish that more people were as interested in this, because this is a topic, like I said, that I could make tons and tons of videos on, but I don't think people seem as interested in this, so unfortunately. But for what it's worth, still a alright video for me. Good tier is where it's going to go. All right, kind of moving into the transitional period when I focused away from music to do primarily TV-based ones now. Beginning with this first one here, describing 50 TV shows in one sentence here. And this is definitely going to go in the God tier as well. This is one of my favorite videos that I've ever made on this channel. There were just so many funny moments in this one. I don't really consider myself like a sketch comedy or anything like that, because most of the time when I'm discussing TV or something, it's more just based on my opinion, and it's just more just like very neutral in terms of like if I'm trying to be funny or not. But in this one, I was definitely going to go for the humor, of course, and at least to me, I just think that this one was executed really well. I got a lot of positive feedback on this as well from Matt and Mike and, you know, other people that I've talked to about this video. They all really loved the Michael Richards bit, which how could you not, of course. Yeah, this was just a really memorable one. Like I said, I think this one is better than the describing 50 bands, but they're very, very similar. So naturally, they are going to belong in the same tier with one another, which is going to be the God tier. Moving into that, we have the top 10 best TV creators. So one of the several top 10s that I've sprinkled on my channel throughout the years here. This is the first, of course, when it came to anything TV related. I think that this one is okay. I'm going to put this in the meh tier. To me, at least, the main problem that I personally have with it is just because I think I was picking more creators that were popular and that other people liked rather than what I personally liked. When I do top 10s, I definitely try to keep it more just my opinion. So even if it's something that is pretty obscure or isn't as popular, isn't as talked about, I will usually put it higher just because I like it more than anything else, which is obviously how top 10s work. But for this one, I was trying to be a little bit more listen to everyone else and see what they like and stuff. Because, like, for example, I have Vince Gilligan in the top 5 because Breaking Bad. And Breaking Bad is a show that I didn't know at the time, like, at all. I just knew it from Reputation, so naturally I had to put him in the top 5. But looking back on it, I don't think he should have been on the list. You know what I mean? So it's just little things like that that kind of annoy me about this video. I think the top 3 are fine. Like, those are all ones that I knew going into it. Like, those were my top 3 favorites. So there was no question that I was going to have those up there. But for some of the other ones, like, I was just putting them on there because other people like them. Like, Greg Garcia is another one, for example, that was on there. Like, I've never even really seen any of his shows, but again, I just know him from Reputation. So it was just kind of things like that that I probably should have taken a closer look at and see if that was really what I wanted this video to be. But otherwise, the presentation and stuff is fine. But I just think some of the content is a little bit hit or miss on this one. Then we have another music compilation here, the biggest rap songs of 2020. So similar to the greatest songs from the 2010s, this was the 2020 version of them, pretty much. And for this one, I'm going to put this in good. I went back to rewatch this one not too long ago, and I think that some of the choices I could have had could have been a little different. There are definitely still some excellent songs on there, some of my favorites from the year, of course, but I think a couple of them, like Pop Stars one, maybe from Drake and who else is on that song? It's DJ Khaled, I think. I don't even know, honestly, but like I know I had that one in there. Like I don't know if that was really one that could have been on there or not. So, you know, a couple things like that, but overall, not a bad one by any means. One of the most controversial, no pun intended here, the 75 controversial TV hot takes here. As much as I hate to admit this, this is a pretty recent video. It's from 2021, and well, actually no, I think it's from just like the bare end of 2020. But it's within the past year or so that I made this, and this is probably my like worst video in terms of any of the recent ones that I've made from the past like year or so. I'm gonna put this in the bad tier. The main thing with this one that I really learned pretty quick after I made it was how fast my opinion changes on these things, because you ask me today like just what my top 10 TV shows are, and then you ask me a month from now what they'll be, it'll completely change. Like, that's just one of the things about doing so much entertainment-based kind of videos and always kind of discovering and finding new things, is your tastes are going to change really quick compared to someone who isn't as well versed on YouTube and stuff, and isn't making several videos a month based on these different entertainment forms that they're naturally going to find new things for, and always going to have to be watching and listening to new things, and just always like kind of expanding their taste on things. There are definitely some takes in this video that I just full on disagree with now. Like The Walking Dead is probably the most infamous example. But I would just say in general, like the TV hot takes video, or like any of the hot takes videos, I like making them because I think it's fun to, again, have that discourse and kind of see what other people's reactions are to it. But you have to really kind of put yourself in the position of like, in like a year or so, are you going to agree with this? Like, is this something that's going to hold up? And I think for this one in particular, it just didn't. So for me, this is, like I said, one of the worst videos on my channel. All right. Next up here, we have the popularity versus fans, a video commentary. Similarly, the TV tests here, popularity versus fans. And for me, I think that these are probably the most underrated videos on my channel because I put a lot of dedication and work into these. And I was really, really, I had a lot of expectations for these. Let me just put it that way. Because I thought that this topic was great for discourse, great for debate, and just had a lot of really great elements to it that was going to make it like a really impactful, sort of interesting topic to expand upon for future videos. And what these ones were kind of laying the groundwork for in some way were the top 100 TV shows, which I eventually didn't make. But at the time, I just thought that this was a really interesting topic and that a lot more people would be interested in them. And it just ultimately didn't happen. So that was kind of disappointing. But for me, I'm going to put these in A1. If you haven't seen these two videos, I definitely would recommend giving them a chance. Super, super, super interesting in terms of just the amount of stuff that you'll learn from these videos, I think. Because there was stuff when I was researching them that I was like blown away by with this topic. Like the difference between shows that are popular or things that are popular versus how fans actually react to them and how the general public actually reacts to them. The contrast between a lot of those statistics is just really, really surprising when you really break it down. And at least the first one, the commentary video, I definitely recommend giving that a watch because there's just a lot of little interesting things that you will discover in that really wasn't like common knowledge to me, at least. That was just really, really, really fascinating to kind of expand upon and kind of test out and see if a lot of it was actually true. Following that, we have another compilation video. We have the YouTube rappers versus the mainstream rappers here. Another topic that I'd been wanting to make some form on for a while. After kind of doing a lot of the TV stuff for a little while, for a few months, took it back to the compilation videos for a couple of them, the next two that we'll talk about here. And this one in particular, I kind of knew going in that it was going to be a bit more of a niche topic, so I didn't expect a lot from this one. So ultimately, it didn't really surprise me that it was pretty low in terms of views. But I will say that this one in particular, I think, has held up pretty well. The YouTube rap scene is definitely something that I personally have been invested in for years now, that I've enjoyed watching and kind of following for a long time. And always really cool to see how much they've grown over the years. Like if you're into the YouTube scene and you have watched and followed a lot of these guys over their grinds for the past like almost decade now, it's really cool to see now that they're starting to get some mainstream recognition and kind of getting that breakthrough that they've been so desperate to have over all these years, and it's finally now just becoming that way. for a lot of these guys. And I thought this video was kind of like the last hurrah in terms of seeing the different comparisons before officially YouTube rappers making it mainstream and really becoming household names now, such as KSI is probably the main example there. But seeing the different comparisons and stuff between them, I thought was really cool as well. So I think this one's held up, but like I said, definitely a niche topic. And then the most recent of all the compilation videos up until my most recent video, which we'll talk about in a minute here, was the rock band's first song versus the song that blew them up versus their most popular song. And speaking of blowing up, I had no expectations for this one as well, because I figured the music compilation scenes were kind of dead, and especially for my channel, because I had been doing the TV stuff, and especially now over the last, this has been up for like 4 or 5 months now, and I've pretty much made exclusively TV related videos at this point. But this one ultimately just out of nowhere just shot up in terms of its viewership, and it's currently sitting at just over 1,000 views. So thank you to everyone that's given this one so much support. I think the topic is something that people are interested in without really knowing it, because a lot of the time you'll see it with rappers in particular, but I've never really seen it with rock bands. So I thought, I'll fucking make it. I'll be the guy that makes the rock band style video in that same way, and it absolutely just blew up. So for that, I'm going to put it in the A1 tier. Not one of my personal favorites in terms of any of my compilations. I would honestly rather have the like A to Z's. I think are a little more interesting to me, but I was really proud of this one, and just seeing how much support it's gotten over the months is really satisfying. So again, thank you to everyone. Definitely A1 tier for that. And now we begin our long stretch of TV-related videos, which is kind of my main domain at this point, going forward on my channel here. Beginning with the TV drama tournament. Similar to the TV sitcom tournament, this was a ton of fun to make. We actually had Steph on the channel for the first time, which was really cool, in like real life form, of course. So that was really cool to have her on one of these big sort of collab videos that I did with Matt and Mike. I think between this and the sitcom tournament, I don't feel as connected with this one as I do with the sitcom, because my involvement with the production of this was actually a bit less than you might expect. The only real role that I had in this video, aside from like editing it and stuff, was giving my list for the shows. And outside of that, like it was pretty much all Mike that did most of the production behind it. He made the board, he put the RNG together, he was the one that kind of set up everything for the day that we were shooting it, and he was really the main driving force behind a lot of that. So you can thank him for putting this one together, because my involvement was a lot more minimal than a lot of my other videos. But that does not stop it from becoming one of my favorites for sure. Definitely going to go in the God tier. The TV tournaments are still definitely a series that we want to keep making for this channel, but the main sort of issue that we find is they just take a long time to produce. Like the first one, we filmed that all the way back in January 2020. It didn't come out till mid-February, so that took about like a month and a half to edit and to put together. And for this one, it was, I'm trying to remember, we filmed it on my birthday, but it didn't come out till I think like mid-May at least, so it was like another month and a half, maybe 2 for this one, because it was even bigger. But yeah, these just take a long time to film and to put together, to edit, because there's so many different things regarding these videos. But as much as I love to make these, it's just hard to get the time to do these when you're so busy with all these other projects and stuff. But when they happen, these are absolutely some of the best that I've ever produced for this channel. With that, we have another one that I just absolutely loved making, the greatest TV shows of all time, parts 1 and 2 here. I'm actually going to separate these, as weird as that sounds. I'm going to put part 1 in the A1 and part 2 in the God tier here. Part 2, of course, is the actual list, so I think that's a little bit more interesting to see in terms of just the casual viewer. But if you love like the detailed, like analytics and the stats and everything like that, like I do for TV, then the part 1 is definitely going to be a really great video to watch in that regard. Making these, it was a ton of work, like putting in all the research and the hours dedicated to just finding all the lists and everything, and doing all the math was like that was a good challenge that I prepped for myself, because I wasn't expecting it to be easy necessarily, but it was a bit of work. Like it was a bit harder than I thought it was going to be, but ultimately I think the end product was super super cool. The only thing I would change about these videos maybe is the presentation. It was a little bit dry in some parts, especially for part 1, because it's a lot of just like general stats and numbers. It's not really talking about the shows in particular, but that to me I think is interesting. So yeah, I'm gonna put these, like I said, 2 different ones there, A1 and God tier respectively. And then moving into that here, we have the first of a brand new ongoing series now, something that I'm definitely going to stick with for quite some time, at least for the foreseeable future, which is, of course, is the Primetime Podcast here. So I've done 3 of these, and I'll knock these all out right now. Part 1, or episode 1, I should say, I'm going to go A1. Episode 2, I'm going to put in meh. And then episode 3, I'm going to put in A1 as well. The only reason why 2 in particular is, I think, the weakest and honestly one of the weaker videos of this kind of new era, this new stint of the TV videos, is because the topic that I did on it, which was the Emmy nominations, I just didn't really have an interest in that, and I was doing it more for the fact that it was a kind of relevant news topic in the world of TV, and naturally there were going to be some YouTube videos about it, but I wanted to throw my hand in there, and the podcast was a great kind of format to do that in. But you can hear me in that video, like I really stumble with a lot of the names and stuff like that, and the TV shows that I'm not as familiar with, I just don't really have much to say on, so it's just not as interesting, I think, as a lot of the other podcasts that I've done or that I will plan on, that I'm planning on doing in the future. And in particular, I think that one is definitely the weakest of them, because the main thing that I want to kind of set myself up, especially with the podcast, is if it's a topic that I know that I want to do, like if it's something that I can actually speak on and have some really good conversation with these guys on, because if not, then it just kind of comes off like I am not really into it, and then that makes the audience not into it. So the host has to be obviously very charismatic and really put themselves in to a topic that they understand and that they're knowledgeable about. And with the Emmy nominations, I just wasn't as familiar with that. So that's one of the main reasons that one's going to go in the Met tier. The other 2, I think, were really well done. The third one, of course, we had Mike and Matt on to discuss tons of different shows and talk about our favorite episodes, and that one was a lot of fun to make. Just a couple weeks ago, actually, we did that. And yeah, that was a blast for sure. And like I said, in the future, we're going to talk about a ton of different topics and have some really, really good discussions on that. The podcast is one of my favorite sort of ideas that I've had for this channel in a long, long time, and I'm having a ton of fun with it. So thanks to everyone that's supporting it too, because it's definitely a different format for me, doing the off the cuff sort of things, off the cuff sort of speaking, I should say, because most of the time I do it a little more scripted or a little more structured in that way. But I'm having a ton of fun with it, and I think they are becoming a quick fan favorite here. So definitely going to go A1 for those, and like I said, math for episode 2. Moving on, the last handful that we have here, we'll knock these out pretty quick. The 75 plus music takes. So this was a music video, or music related video, I should say, regarding some of the controversial takes I have, very similar to how I did it with the TV one. And I think opposed to, of course, the when I did it with the describing it in one sentence, where these two are kind of on the same playing field, the music one for this is definitely a lot stronger here. I'm gonna go A1 with that one. Um, to me, I think music is just something that I've had more of a passion in for a longer amount of time. Because I, like, as you can tell from this channel, have been much more ingrained in talking about music and discussing music than I have with TV, which has been a relatively new thing that I've just discovered only in the past couple years. And with music, it's a lot easier for me to say that something is like a longtime favorite more effectively or more convincingly because it is, But with TV, like if I said something was my all-time favorite of a certain genre, that might only constitute like a year if I've only known it for that long. Whereas music, I've been listening and discussing music with my parents and with Matt for almost my entire life. So if I say like Green Day is my favorite band, that means it's been that way for like a decade. You know what I mean? So it's just much easier for me to convincingly talk about it in that same way. So I think this one was a lot better executed. Some of them have the potential maybe to not age as well in the future. It kind of more depends on what happens to these individual musicians' careers. Like some people I talk about, like Olivia Rodrigo, for instance, is really new. Like she's only really been around for like this past year in 2021, and I talk about in that video that I think she's gonna have a great career because her production is awesome and she's so diverse and all the different styles that she accomplishes. But who's to say, that that's the case? Because the music industry is a lot more cutthroat than TV is. So some of that will just depend on what happens with these people's careers and stuff. But I think overall, this video is still a very solid one, at least for now, especially. And personally, I definitely agree with it more than I do with my TV related hot takes. Then we have my favorite and least favorite TV characters video. This is another topic that I've been wanting to do, or that I had wanted to do for a while. Thanks in part to Mike as well, because he was doing the character tier list on his channel, so that kind of gave me some motivation and some inspiration to talk about some of my favorite and least favorite characters on a bunch of different shows. The format on this one I thought was really cool as well, picking them out of the hat. I thought that was kind of neat. But I think overall, the only issue that I have with this one is it's just kind of too long. I feel like I could have chopped this one down a little bit because I went in much more detail with a lot of these characters than I was anticipating. So it might come off a little bit redundant at times, and it might come off a little dry. But outside of that, I think this is still a very solid one. Definitely one of my favorite concepts and ideas that I've had for the TV-related videos. Next up, the top 10 best and worst TV couples. Basically the same kind of idea that I'm doing with the characters here. I'm going to put that in the great tier as well. Basically the same pros and cons with this one. I think that the concept is great. I get to cover a lot of different shows, but it's a little bit long. It's a little bit redundant at times. Doing them both, like the best and worst together, I've seen some videos like that on YouTube before, but not a whole lot. And I always think that that's a cool way to sort of compare them, because the audience really gets to see specifically what you like and dislike about certain characters or certain topics. And I think having them directly embedded in the same video is a really efficient way to kind of explain that to people and then have that debate as well over just what in general are the best and worst. And TV couples, obviously it has a lot of connection with the characters because that's what you're discussing, but it's more about, the chemistry of these characters and the shows that they're on, and kind of seeing how all of that takes place and kind of what effect it has on the overall appeal or non-appeal, if you will, of these couples there. So there's a lot more to break down, right? There's a lot more factors that go into it as well. So I think in terms of that, the discussion is very, very rich, and there's a lot of great talking points sprinkled throughout this video as well. So for all that, I'm going to say a great tier. Next up, the most recent tier list, if you don't count this one here, the singer and actor tier list, which is better? And this one, of course, had Steph in it. I'm going to put this in the good tier, I think. I think for me personally, like I said, with the kind of similar to the drama video, I didn't really have as much in terms of the production on this video because it was more Steph's idea. So I let her basically come up with the idea and pick all the different actors and stuff and kind of the format of the video. So I wasn't as engaged with this one as much. Some of the people on this in this video I have nothing to speak on because I don't even know them. So it's just little things like that that I think are kind of sprinkled throughout that don't make it as good as it could have been. Looking back on it too, it's not even that old, but when I was going through it and I was kind of thinking there could have been other people on here that we could have had, because there's a lot more celebrities than I had anticipated that are both ingrained in the music and acting sides of entertainment, and we only did a very, very small sample, so we might come back to this at some time and do some more, because there are a lot more people that we could talk about. But for how it stands right now, I think this one's pretty good overall. So, and then finally, talking about the most recent video here on my channel, which is my favorite songs off of every Green Day album. So another compilation video here. I wanted to do this topic as well for quite some time, just doing a band sort of retrospective or an artist retrospective and talking about every song from band's catalog off of every release, or if it was TV, maybe like my favorite episode for every season of a show is also another idea I've had for a while now. But beginning it with music, because TV copyright is a whole other ball game that I just don't even want to get into at the moment. But with this one in particular, the execution was fine. Initially, I had every song in full, and it was gonna just be like the entire song for the album, and it was basically just gonna be like a mixtape, if you will, at that. But because of copyright, I wasn't able to do that, so I had to go back and chop it all up, and then it still wasn't good enough, and it got blocked a second time, so I had to chop it up even more, and at that point it was basically like half its initial length, which was kind of a bummer, because then you don't really get to hear all of the song that makes it so good. But that's just me being a Green Day fanboy, so you can kind of see how that would affect my thoughts on the video there. But eventually it was able to get released off the condition that Reprise and WMG would be putting ads on the video, which I have seen that, I guess, before in some ways with some of my other copyright, but it wasn't to the quantity of the amount of times it would do it, because it was for every song, and there's 13 songs in there, so that's a lot of potential for these people to get even more money off of shit that they didn't even make, and like the whole debate with copyright too is a very kind of people get so personally offended by copyright and stuff. Like if you say that you can't use certain things, and fair use of course comes into that play, and all these, and there's so many different like people involved and all these different things that you have to kind of factor in, and it just becomes so much work. It just becomes so much of a headache that most of the time now I don't even try to put in clips, or I don't even bother to put in videos anymore, or like music, because it's just way too much to have to like re-edit and go through the video just to have people watch it. At the end of the day, like that's all I want, and just copyright is just becoming such a roadblock in that regard. So ultimately, after 2 years of this bullshit that I decided, talked about in the description there, that for every 4 views that this video gets, I'm going to be donating $1 to charity in some way, and that's just more or less to show that I'm not a greedy asshole that wants to take everyone's hard-earned money from them. Not that I make AdSense anyway, so it's not even that big of a deal. But I just get so fucking pissed that it gets blocked and everything, and I'm not even able to have people view it in the first place there, which is kind of annoying. So instead, I decided that I'm going to be donating for all the views that this video gets. So if you haven't seen it, go ahead and support it. Rack up the view count there. And by the end of the month, we'll see how much this video has accumulated. And from that, that's the amount that I will be donating to different charities. But as far as where it lands on this tier list, I would say overall it's a pretty solid one, despite all the copyright issues and everything and having to chop up the songs. I mean, it still sounds good. It's still Green Day. I mean, if you're a Green Day fan, obviously, go and check it out. Definitely still some, this one's a bit more layered in terms of that backstory and everything that went into it. But the video itself is totally fine, like no problems with that at all. So great tier is where it's going to go. So as a result of that, that is my personal list for all my previously uploaded videos here. The video, of course, that you're watching right now is the 50th video on this channel. And once again, I want to give a huge thank you to all my subs, all my viewers, just anyone that's come across my videos and decided to give them a chance at some point. This has been a incredible journey throughout the last couple of years, and definitely something that I am going to continue with. Even though there have been headaches, even though there have been some aspects of YouTube that I'm not a fan of by any means, I would say the overall experience has been nothing but positive. And being able to collab with my close friends and family as well is also one of the best parts of doing YouTube as well. Definitely we'll have some more in the future coming. And just anything that you guys want to say in the comments, please feel free to share. Again, what are your favorite or least favorite videos? Don't be afraid, please. Do not be afraid to call any of my favorites some of your least, if that's how you feel, because I always want to make the best possible videos and kind of always be engaged with what you guys want and what you guys feel is best for my channel. So with that in mind, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day there. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.